For decades, one of the most dangerous rivalries in modern geopolitics has simmered just below the surface. A slow-burning conflict between two powerful nations, separated by thousands of miles, yet locked in a struggle that has shaped the entire Middle East and could change the world. On one side stands the United States, the world's most powerful military, a global superpower with bases across the region, alliances spanning continents, and unmatched technological capabilities. On the other stands Iran, a revolutionary state with deep regional influence, a sophisticated military network, and leaders who have spent more than 40 years resisting American pressure. For years, this confrontation has unfolded in shadows, through sanctions, cyber attacks, proxy wars, and political brinkmanship. But today, the tension feels different. The possibility of a direct confrontation, something both sides have carefully avoided for decades, is once again being debated in war rooms, intelligence briefings, and diplomatic channels. Because if a full-scale war between Iran and the United States ever erupts, it would not be contained. It could ripple across the globe, shifting the balance of power in ways few can fully predict. To understand the stakes, we must look at where this conflict is happening. 2. The West, Iraq, where American forces waged a costly war for nearly a decade. To the south, the Persian Gulf, through which roughly 17 million barrels of oil flow daily, nearly a third of the world's seaborne oil. Across the region, American military bases in Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, and the United Arab Emirates, each. Within striking distance, Iran's neighbors are equally significant. Israel sees Iran as its most serious strategic threat. Saudi Arabia views Tehran as its main regional competitor. Iran has also cultivated a network of allied groups across the Middle East, from Hezbollah in Lebanon to militias in Iraq, Syria, and Yemen. Any conflict between Iran and the United States would almost certainly draw in multiple countries. In other words, it wouldn't stay contained. It could ignite the entire region. Unlike traditional conflicts, there are no massive armies facing each other across open terrain. Instead, the rivalry plays out in the gray zone, economic sanctions designed to weaken the other side. Cyber attacks on critical infrastructure, covert operations and intelligence maneuvers, proxy conflicts through allied militias and local partners, political influence campaigns shaping governments and public opinion. The problem is simple. The line between pressure and escalation is razor-thin. A single misstep, a drone strike, a missile misfire, or a misinterpreted warning could spiral into full-scale war. History has already provided warning signs. Oil tankers attacked in the Persian Gulf, drone strikes on vital energy facilities, missile exchanges between regional militias, and in January 2020, the assassination of Iranian General Qasem Soleimani, a move that brought the two nations closer than ever to open conflict. Iran retaliated with missile strikes on bases hosting American troops in Iraq. Air defenses went on high alert. The world watched, wondering if the Middle East was about to erupt. In the end, both sides stepped back. But the crisis proved something crucial. The rivalry between Iran and America is no longer theoretical. It is real. And it is volatile. Part of the danger lies in perception. For the United States, Iran is a destabilizing force, accused of supporting militant groups, challenging U.S. allies, and pursuing controversial nuclear ambitions. For Iran, the United States is a long-standing adversary that has attempted for decades to weaken the country through sanctions, political pressure, and isolation. Every action is interpreted as proof of hostile intent. Every escalation justifies another response. And over time, the cycle deepens. Several factors are making the situation even more precarious. Shifting Middle East alliances. Old rivalries are evolving. While countries that once avoided cooperation now quietly align over shared concerns about Iran's influence. Global power politics. Russia and China have strengthened military and economic ties with Iran, while the U.S. maintains a strong regional presence. The nuclear question. Iran insists its nuclear program is for civilian purposes, including energy and medical research, but Western governments fear it could eventually produce weapons. Every failed negotiation or sanction escalation increases the risk of confrontation. Miscalculation. History shows that many wars begin not by plan, but by accident. Misread signals, surprise attacks, or unintended escalations. In a region dense with armed groups, missiles, drones, and naval patrols, the margin for error is minimal. A single misstep, a misinterpreted missile launch, an attack on shipping lanes could trigger a chain reaction. Global oil markets could be disrupted, regional allies drawn in, superpowers forced to make difficult calculations. A bilateral clash could become a global crisis. To truly understand why this rivalry has become so dangerous, we must go back in time. Long before today's sanctions, nuclear talks, and drone strikes, there was a moment when Iran and the United States were not enemies, but allies. And the events that followed would change the course of Middle Eastern history forever, because, to understand the present, we first need to understand that history. To understand today's high-stakes confrontation, we must travel back more than half a century. The story begins in a time when Iran and the United States were not enemies. In the early 20th century, Iran, then known as Persia, was a land of rich culture, history, and strategic importance. Its vast oil reserves drew the attention of global powers, while American interests were initially limited, mostly commercial ventures and diplomatic missions. Everything changed after World War II. The Cold War was redrawing global alliances, and Iran's strategic position made it a key player. The first major turning point came in 1953. Iran's democratically elected Prime Minister, Mohammad Mossadegh, nationalized the country's oil industry, previously controlled by British companies. This move enraged Britain and alarmed the United States, which feared Iran might tilt toward the Soviet Union, shifting the balance of power in the Middle East. In response, the CIA orchestrated Operation Ajax, a covert coup that removed Mossadegh and reinstated Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi as Iran's ruler. The operation left a lasting scar on the Iranian psyche. Many citizens saw it as proof that the United States would intervene whenever it suited its interests. Yet during the Shah's rule, Iran became a close U.S. ally, benefiting from military aid, economic support, and political protection in exchange for loyalty to Western interests. But alliances built on convenience rarely last. By the late 1970s, resentment toward the Shah's authoritarianism, combined with social and economic unrest, sparked a revolutionary movement. In 1979, the revolution reached its climax. The Shah was overthrown, and the Islamic Republic of Iran was established under Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini. For the first time, the United States faced a revolutionary Iran that rejected Western influence outright. Within months, Iran staged one of the most dramatic events of the 20th century: the seizure of the U.S. Embassy in Tehran. 52 Americans were held hostage for 404 days. The crisis dominated international headlines, humiliated the United States, and cemented a deep, enduring hostility between the two nations. Diplomacy was replaced by mistrust, and every interaction became tinged with suspicion. During the 1980s, the tension evolved further. The Iran-Iraq War raged from 1980 to 1988. While the United States officially maintained neutrality, it secretly provided intelligence and military support to Iraq under Saddam Hussein. Iran saw this as direct interference. The decade also witnessed repeated confrontations in the Persian Gulf, where American naval forces clashed with Iranian vessels, a pattern that foreshadowed later gray zone conflicts. In the 1990s, Iran faced increasing isolation. U.S.-led sanctions targeted key sectors of the Iranian economy, aiming to curb its regional ambitions. Despite the pressure, Iran pursued a strategy of resilience, building alliances with non-state actors and regional proxies. Groups like Hezbollah in Lebanon and Shiite militias in Iraq, and later operatives in Syria and Yemen, became instruments of influence, allowing Tehran to extend its reach without engaging in direct military conflict. The early 2000s added a new layer of complexity. After the 9/11 attacks and the U.S. invasions of Afghanistan and Iraq, Iran found itself at the center of a shifting regional order. The U.S. toppling of Saddam Hussein created a power vacuum in Iraq that Iran quickly exploited. Through political influence and militia networks, Tehran solidified its footprint, challenging American objectives and shaping the regional balance of power. Rhetoric between the two nations grew increasingly aggressive, with accusations of terrorism, nuclear ambitions, and destabilization dominating the headlines. The nuclear issue became a central point of contention in the mid-2000s. Western powers accused Iran of pursuing nuclear weapons under the guise of civilian energy programs. Iran insisted its program was peaceful, focused on energy and medical applications. Mistrust ran deep, and the U.S., alongside European allies, imposed strict sanctions to pressure Iran into negotiations. Diplomacy and coercion became intertwined, in a delicate balance where every negotiation risked collapse. A rare moment of cooperation appeared in 2015 with the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA. The agreement limited Iran's nuclear program in exchange for sanctions relief. But the détente proved fragile. In 2018, the United States withdrew from the agreement, reinstating harsh sanctions, including secondary measures that affected global companies. Iran responded with measured but escalating provocations, testing U.S. resolve, threatening shipping lanes, and accelerating uranium enrichment beyond agreed limits. Through decades of confrontation, one pattern emerges. Conflict between the two nations has rarely been direct, but it has always been persistent. Covert operations, proxy wars, sanctions, and diplomatic standoffs created a complex web of mistrust. Each escalation builds on the last, intertwining politics, strategy, and psychology in ways that make the rivalry extremely difficult to untangle. Today, the stakes are higher than ever. Rapidly changing Middle Eastern alliances, global power, competition, and the shadow of nuclear capability magnify every tension. Both nations carry long memories, and each perceives the other as an existential threat. History shows that ignoring these perceptions can lead to miscalculations, and in this rivalry, miscalculations could be catastrophic. The story of Iran and America is, in many ways, a story of unintended consequences. Every intervention, every diplomatic maneuver, every act of resistance sets the stage for the next. Decisions made in 1953 still reverberate decades later. The hostage crisis of 1979 continues to shape perceptions. Proxy wars and sanctions are more than tactical moves. They are symbols of power, revenge, and survival. Now, as we confront the present moment, the lessons of history become more than academic. The tensions that exist today are not new, but they are more dangerous than ever. Each side is armed with decades of experience, networks of influence, and strategic patience, but also with deep mistrust and a willingness to act decisively. The stage is set. The players are ready. And the world is watching. To understand how this rivalry has evolved into today's high-stakes confrontation, we now turn to the modern era, where diplomacy, proxy conflicts, and military posturing collide in ways that could ignite a global crisis. The world is watching. The tension between Iran and the United States has shifted from historical grudges to a modern reality where every move carries enormous consequences. This is no longer about Cold War-era mistrust, it is about the present, and the stakes could not be higher. The Middle East has become a chessboard of modern warfare. Unlike the massive armies of old, today's battles are fought in shadows, through proxy militias, drone strikes, cyber operations, and strategic posturing across land, sea, and air. Iran has mastered this new type of conflict. Through a vast network of allied groups across Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and Yemen, Tehran projects influence far beyond its borders. Hezbollah in Lebanon, Shiite militias in Iraq, and the Houthi rebels in Yemen act as strategic tools, capable of threatening regional stability without directly confronting U.S. forces. A missile fired from Yemen or a drone strike in Iraq could be traced back to Iranian support, yet it stops short of open war, giving Tehran both power and plausible deniability. The United States responds with overwhelming conventional strength. Hundreds of military bases, advanced aircraft, naval fleets in the Persian Gulf, and missile defense systems create a vast strategic net designed to monitor, deter, and, if necessary, strike. But even this power carries risk. A miscalculated strike, an unplanned escalation, or a misunderstood signal could ignite a regional crisis in hours. The Persian Gulf remains the most volatile flashpoint. Nearly a third of the world's seaborne oil passes through these narrow waters. Tankers have been sabotaged, drones have harassed commercial vessels, and naval confrontations have flared. Each incident is a test, a probe to gauge the other side's reaction, and each carries the potential to spiral into full-scale conflict. Israel watches closely. For decades, Tehran's missile program, support for Hezbollah, and presence in Syria have made Iran Israel's most immediate strategic threat. Israel has the capability to strike Iranian targets beyond its borders, adding another layer of complexity. Any confrontation between Iran and the United States could quickly draw Israel into the fight, widening the scope of escalation. Saudi Arabia and other Gulf states are deeply involved, though often quietly. Iran's influence over Shiite communities, proxy forces, and regional politics challenges their security. In response, these states have strengthened ties with the United States and acquired advanced military systems to counter Iran's growing capabilities. This delicate web of alliances means that any flare-up could rapidly pull multiple countries into the conflict. Cyber warfare has added a new dimension. Iran has invested heavily in digital capabilities, capable of disrupting infrastructure, communications, and financial systems. The United States maintains offensive cyber operations to deter aggression. Unlike physical battles, these attacks leave no battlefield footprints, yet their consequences could be devastating. A blackout, a port shutdown, or a crippled banking system, any of which could trigger a military response. Drone technology has also changed the rules of engagement. Both nations deploy unmanned aerial vehicles for surveillance, strikes, and intelligence gathering without risking personnel. In Yemen, Iraq, and Syria, drones have targeted key leaders and critical infrastructure under a veil of ambiguity. But drones can provoke miscalculations. A single strike, misread by the other side, could set off a chain reaction neither intends. The nuclear question remains a constant shadow. Iran's uranium enrichment program and the legacy of the 2015 nuclear deal keep tensions high. Every announcement about new centrifuges, enrichment levels, or inspections is scrutinized worldwide. The United States and its allies view these developments as potential steps toward nuclear capability, while Iran frames them as legitimate sovereign activities. Each misreading carries the risk of catastrophic escalation. Despite the dangers, both nations exercise a degree of restraint. Modern conflict is a game of calculated risk, testing boundaries while avoiding total war. But restraint is fragile. Intelligence failures, regional incidents, or political pressure could push either side into unintended actions. History shows that in a landscape filled with proxies, advanced weapons, and deep mistrust, escalation can be sudden and uncontrollable. Alliances further complicate the picture. Iran's ties with Russia and China provide diplomatic support, economic partnerships, and access to advanced technology. Meanwhile, the United States must coordinate with NATO allies, Gulf partners, and Israel to maintain a coherent strategy. Misalignment anywhere in this network could create exploitable gaps, increasing the risk of miscalculation. Diplomacy continues alongside confrontation. Secret talks, back-channel negotiations, and international mediation aim to prevent escalation. Yet every move carries the weight of decades of mistrust. A single misstatement or leaked negotiation could be seen as weakness or provocation, affecting decisions on both sides. Today's Middle East is a delicate ecosystem. Every drone flight, missile test, naval maneuver, and cyber intrusion adds to the tension. Each side constantly calculates what can be done without crossing the line. Where is the threshold that will trigger retaliation? Influence is extended carefully, yet the margin for error is slim. Oil markets fluctuate with every incident. Global leaders monitor intelligence reports closely. Populations live under the constant specter of escalation. The modern Iran-America conflict is as much about perception, influence, and strategic signaling as it is about weapons and armies. Every action is a message. Every response is a calculation. The risk of escalation is ever present. Proxy conflicts, cyber attacks, regional alliances, and military posturing create an interconnected web where no single incident exists in isolation. The modern battlefield is everywhere and nowhere, a landscape of constant tension, unseen threats, and potential disaster. And now, as the world braces for the possibility of open confrontation, one question looms. What happens if restraint fails? What if a single strike, accident, or miscalculation ignites a war neither side wants but cannot avoid? The answers lie in understanding the military capabilities, strategic calculations, and global consequences of a potential Iran-America war. The stakes are no longer regional. They are global. The thought of open war between Iran and the United States is enough to make global capitals hold their breath. Imagine this. A missile launched from Iran strikes a U.S. base in Iraq. Within hours, warships in the Persian Gulf are on high alert. Commercial tankers are rerouted. Cyber alarms flash across control centers from Washington to Dubai. This is the high-stakes reality that could unfold in an instant. The United States possesses the world's most technologically advanced military. Aircraft carriers project power across oceans. Stealth bombers and precision-guided missiles can hit targets with deadly accuracy. Cyber capabilities allow disruption of critical infrastructure without firing a single bullet. U.S. forces bring decades of combat experience and a global intelligence network. In theory, American forces could dominate the skies and seas within hours, but even unmatched power cannot control every variable in the Middle East's complex landscape. Iran counters with asymmetric strategies designed to neutralize conventional superiority. Its missile arsenal ranges from short to long-range ballistic systems capable of targeting bases, energy facilities, and major cities. Fast attack boats, submarines, and naval mines can threaten shipping in the Persian Gulf. Across Iraq, Lebanon, Syria, and Yemen, proxy networks extend Tehran's reach without deploying its own troops. Each of these groups, Hezbollah, Shiite militias, Houthi rebels, operates with plausible deniability, creating a web of influence that complicates direct confrontation. Geography intensifies the stakes. The Strait of Hormuz, a narrow choke point, through which nearly a fifth of the world's oil flows, could become the first battlefield. A single strike on a tanker or naval vessel could ripple through global energy markets, sending oil prices soaring and creating economic shockwaves worldwide. Control of this strategic corridor would be a key objective and a deadly flashpoint from the very first hours of conflict. Analysts fear a rapid escalation scenario. A targeted Iranian missile strike on a U.S. base could trigger American retaliation. On Iranian missile sites or military installations, each side possesses the capability to respond, and each response carries uncertainty. Misjudged intentions or misread signals could turn a limited engagement into a full-scale war within days. Cyber warfare would play a central role. Energy grids could black out, communications networks could fail, ports could grind to a halt. Both nations have demonstrated the ability to launch digital attacks that cripple critical systems. These invisible operations could provoke real-world retaliation, adding another layer of danger to an already volatile battlefield. Naval operations in the Persian Gulf would be equally tense. Iran could deploy fast attack boats, submarines, and minefields to harass U.S. ships. Even with advanced carriers and destroyers, American forces would face constant threats. Every maneuver is high stakes. A misstep could trigger retaliation, and a local naval skirmish could escalate into a regional sea war. Air operations would be no less complex. Iran's layered air defenses and missile systems are designed to challenge U.S. strikes, creating a deadly environment for aircraft. Precision-guided U.S. strikes could neutralize key threats, but civilian areas and regional allies make every operation fraught with risk. A single miscalculation could broaden the conflict, drawing in neighboring countries. Regional allies would act quickly. Israel, Saudi Arabia, and Gulf states have strategic stakes that could compel intervention. Proxy groups aligned with Iran could launch attacks on U.S. forces or allied nations, turning the battlefield into a multi-front war across land, sea, and air. Historical grievances, national pride, and strategic objectives all combine to make outcomes unpredictable. The human and economic costs would be staggering. Military personnel and civilians would face immediate danger. Cities, ports, and criticals. Infrastructure could be damaged or destroyed. Global energy markets would destabilize, shipping would be disrupted, and nations far beyond the Middle East would feel the shockwaves. In this modern battlefield, the first strike does not guarantee victory. It guarantees a response. Each nation's retaliation could be interpreted as the start of all-out war. The line between restraint and catastrophe is razor-thin. Miscommunication, accident, or misjudgment could ignite a war neither side truly wants. Diplomacy in the early hours of conflict would be fragile. Allies, mediators, and international organizations could attempt de-escalation, but history shows that once missiles fly, controlling the trajectory is nearly impossible. The conflict would span multiple domains: land, sea, air, cyberspace, and economic pressure. Sabotage, drone attacks, missile barrages, and cyber intrusions would unfold simultaneously. The battlefield would be everywhere and nowhere. This war would not just be fought for territory or dominance. It would be fought for credibility, perception, and survival. Both nations view restraint as a potential weakness, yet aggression carries the risk of triggering a chain reaction beyond control. The stakes are existential, and the margin for error microscopic. A direct conflict between Iran and the United States could reshape the region and the world. Cities could be destroyed, oil prices could spike, trade could grind to a halt, and alliances would be tested in unprecedented ways. What begins as a local confrontation could rapidly spiral into a global crisis, yet, for now, both sides continue to posture. Calculated provocations, strategic demonstrations of power, and measured retaliations dominate the playbook. Every move is deliberate. Every signal is read and countered. Because in this game, the first strike could determine not only the outcome of battle, but the survival of influence, credibility, and perhaps nations themselves. The stage is set, the weapons are ready, the players are poised, and the next move could change the world forever. Imagine the first missile launched across the Strait of Hormuz. Alarms blare on naval ships, tankers halt mid-journey, cyber alerts flash across energy grids from Washington to Riyadh. In an instant, decades of tension could ignite. This is the precarious reality of the Iran-America rivalry today. One possible path is stalemate. Both nations might choose calculated restraint, keeping the pressure high but avoiding direct confrontation. Proxy conflicts continue, cyber operations unfold in shadows, and regional maneuvers test limits without crossing the line. It is a high-stakes chess game played in silence, watched by the world, waiting for one misstep to spark escalation. But restraint is fragile. A single missile, a misfired drone, or a misunderstanding in the Persian Gulf could trigger a chain reaction. Each side is armed, prepared, and hypersensitive to the other's moves. The margin for error is microscopic. In such a complex landscape, even the most deliberate strategies could unravel within hours. Diplomacy remains a critical lifeline. Back-channel negotiations, international mediation, and careful dialogue offer opportunities to diffuse tensions. Yet decades of mistrust, domestic politics, and historical grievances make compromise difficult. Every concession risks being perceived as weakness, creating a paradox. The path to peace exists, but stepping onto it requires extraordinary trust. The nuclear question is central. Iran's uranium enrichment program, inspections, and past negotiations remain under intense scrutiny. A renewed agreement could stabilize the situation temporarily, but failure would likely trigger sanctions, military alert, and heightened tensions. Even minor miscalculations in perception could cascade into serious confrontation. Technological advances add layers of unpredictability. Missile systems, drones, cyber capabilities, and electronic warfare tools constantly shift the balance. Unlike conventional wars of the past, this battlefield is multidimensional and often invisible. The first strike does not guarantee victory, it guarantees reaction. Regional dynamics are equally volatile. Iran's influence over militias, political factions, and proxies creates numerous potential flashpoints. Meanwhile, U.S. allies, Israel, Saudi Arabia, and Gulf states, remain prepared to act if threatened. Any incident could escalate into a multi-front conflict spreading far beyond a single theater. Containment is nearly impossible. Global consequences would be immediate. Oil markets could spike, shipping lanes could be blocked, and financial systems destabilized. Geopolitical alliances might shift as nations respond to uncertainty, while public opinion pressures governments to act decisively. Even a localized conflict could have ramifications across continents. Yet pathways to de-escalation still exist. Limited agreements, confidence-building measures, and strategic restraint can prevent miscalculations. Regional actors and international organizations can mediate, creating breathing space for dialogue. While imperfect, these tools are vital to prevent catastrophe. The human toll is profound. Civilians, soldiers, and communities in the Middle East would face immediate danger. Social, economic, and humanitarian impacts would ripple outward, far beyond the battlefield. Behind every strategic calculation lies a human story, and the consequences of missteps are deeply personal. The future of this rivalry is uncertain, tense, and volatile. Each missile test, cyber attack, or diplomatic statement becomes part of a careful choreography of tension. One misstep could ignite a chain reaction with consequences felt across the world. And yet, there is cautious optimism. History shows that, even in moments of extreme tension, deliberate restraint can prevent disaster. Diplomacy, back-channel talks, and careful strategic calculation remain tools for survival. The choices made now will define the next chapter of this rivalry. Ultimately, the story of Iran and America is a story of decisions: ambition versus risk, action versus consequence, perception versus reality. The future is not written. It will be shaped by choices in the hours, days, and years ahead. The world is watching. Every decision matters. Every action counts. The next move could reshape not only the Middle East but the global order. Will diplomacy prevail, or will miscalculation ignite a conflict that changes everything? The answer remains uncertain, and it is this uncertainty that makes the Iran-America rivalry one of the most compelling and dangerous stories of our time.